Press Start 5th Anniversary is the kind of CD that breaks my heart. It looks like a CD I buy at a gas station before a long trip. But what if I told you that it's more than just the regretful purchase of a petroleum pit stop? It contains 9 pieces, all of them live performances from 2009's Press Start Symphony of Games concert. As you can tell from the title, it was sold as a CD to celebrate their 5th anniversary. They made well into their 10th anniversary, but unfortunately no CD was made for that. Even more unfortunate was the concert's end not too long ago. I don't know if there was any heartbreak when the concert series ended or if everyone was pretty much just casual about it, but if it only broke one person's heart, then it was me, as Press Start was one of the best things in like ever. Press Start was spearheaded by Nobuo Uematsu as a means to orchestrate and perform music from Japanese video games. It was basically the second coming of the orchestral game concerts, only more Eastern focused, and it wasn't Koichi Sugiyama holding the baton leading the charge. Famitsu, a popular gaming magazine in Japan, contributed to its production, and it seems like as soon as they lost interest that Press Start's fate was finally sealed. I'm not sure what Nobuo thought of it. I was actually surprised that he was one of the main people in charge of this concert's creation and execution. I'd have thought he would have been too busy, distracted by his rock band endeavors. You'll make it out of the garage someday, we don't give up on the dream! It's even been rumored that some composers tire of the orchestra fixation in Japan. So when Press Start ended, it's hard to think that anyone with their finger on the button was upset about it. As you can tell, this is all just speculation and rumor on my part. I mean, heck, barely anyone outside Japan even knew this existed. Of course, it's Japan. They're isolated from the rest of the world, and I'm that guy glued to the plexiglass window, breathing heavily and wiping the perspiration away to see what's up. Their conventional wisdom says that if they ignore me, I'll go away. But they're wrong. Look, the reason this concert was special is because they played music no other concert series would even think to touch, let alone arrange or play. They played pieces from Kid Icarus, Xenogears, Zone of the Enders, freaking El Shaddai. No one even likes mentioning El Shaddai, but they played it. Now, if you're looking forward to hearing the pieces I just mentioned, you can't, and you never will. They might have been recorded for all I know, but they've never been released in any format. This CD is the silver lining, the one piece of evidence any of us have that this was a thing, that it even existed. There are 9 tracks, each a piece of music or some kind of medley belonging to each franchise represented, and we're gonna check down all of them. First up to bat is Persona. I know of this series, but I've never really been interested in it. I was aware of its music though, and this orchestral rendition is absolutely stunning. It begins with a beautiful bit of vocalese. It's filled with plenty of gratifying tonics and lilts that sway the listener through a typhoon of sympathy, remorse, and strife. Perhaps fittingly, knowing the game, some sudden swells almost make it sound as if she's possessed, and there's a kind of tossing and turning throughout that make this first part of the medley its most absorbing moment. It's so pretty, one is bound to miss the wise instrumental work in the background, from the flute's pristine fluttering to the plucked and quickly wavering strings that seep almost sheepishly past that heavenly voice. A wallowing cello also gives excellent contrast to the singer as the percussion satisfyingly rumbles before one final cry. It's rather jarring then when the next phrase of the medley begins with something more combative. This is considered to be the weak link of the medley, and it is, but it's still good. Its violent tone leaves very quickly when the horns enter, setting up what has a charming school parade feel to it. The medley concludes with a friendly and very Japanese-sounding section. It's got a nice modern flair to it, even as the piano's sound gives it a more aged, mystic quality, as if I expect some kind of royalty to be carried out as it marches on. A phrase near the very end reminds me of Class's Aitapu, leading us to one final, bright, decidedly more thematic finale. The Ease Medley didn't do anything for me at first. This is a series very famous for its music, and as such, I was expecting a bit more. It grew on me once I gave it another chance, and now it's one of my top favorites of Press Start. It begins with an oboe being an oboe before the strings carry it off. I get a sense of uncertain safety listening to it. When the strings enter into a gallop and the trumpet sounds, we're treated with that charismatic adrenaline that the series music is known for, and it is wonderful. I still wish it was faster, but what we get here is nothing to complain about. The transition to the final phrase is a dizzying barrage of instruments. It's hard to keep track. It all leads to a collapse that returns us to where we began before giving way to one heck of a crescendo. Those who like loud sound, put headphones up and blast this one. Track 5, Spelunker, is a lot of fun. The live audience even laughs at one point. This piece, more than any other, sounds telegraphed to something on screen. Oddly enough, that doesn't ruin the piece. It's a funny and smart stint of arrangement. There's a very non-humorous theme at play here. It's very determined and brave, but not too strict so as to fail as proper setup for the piece's repeated punchline. A phrase that I've come to know as Spelunker's Game Over theme interrupts the piece several times, enough to be humorous without becoming an interference. Spelunker's goofy but endearing jazzy theme has a very tongue-in-cheek contrast contrast with the opening of the piece, as if to suggest we have the wrong person raiding the dungeon. But by the end, you're rooting for him. It's a crafty and catchy little piece of music. Professor Layton's piece is atypical mystery music, and like all atypical mystery music, never fails to pull you in. The xylophone leads us to tragedy, the horns signal the arrival of our ace detective, and that oh-so-sweet macabre violin unsettles everything until the case is solved. The trumpet lends some Spanish passionate color, but it's the footsteps of the piano that really preserve the energy. They feel like the culprit trying to sneak past our incisive detective. It's a great, colorful piece that not only gives something for the instruments to do, but something different from the rest, which adds layers of drama and tension. Fun as stuff like Spelunker, Layton, or Ease is, Press Start is, perhaps fittingly, at its best when at its most Japanese. Samurai Showdown features a shamisen, very oriental flute playing, and scary, often climactic percussion. The shamisen gets the most time in the sun after a very daunting orchestral smackdown, that's an official term. It's a comical transition to go from that to the plucky shamisen, yet it fits, almost resembling an audience that watches a showdown between two warriors in giddy delight. The playing is nice, and when the orchestra returns, it builds into an exciting finish that almost seems to end right before the final blow, instead of giving us one. It's great. The music in track 4 is from Atagurusu, a visual sound novel released back on the Super Famicom in Japan only. The music certainly makes you want to know more about it. Though just a medley of 4 tracks with a couple rests to separate them, it actually has plenty of atmosphere to spare. The xylophone and harp have a dulcet sound, and a very subtle but unnerving violin wavers underneath, along with a cello, musically sound but spiritually detached and forlorn. A Phoenix Wright-sounding investigation phrase sounds by the cello in the next passage as the violins give in to a nervous, riddled panic. It's a genuinely disturbing and creepy piece of music despite never really ever coming across as horror. It's actually quite restful most of the time. The closest it gets to something scary is in the third passage, but that's more suspenseful than anything. The final passage concludes with a very Japanese melody played by the flute, and it'll leave something in you by its end. A certain time and place feel emphasized in the entire medley, along with a haunting sense of misery and sorrow that's contained within it. Atagurusu's final moments give some closure, but with a perfectly subtle and mournful piece. Overall, this piece really surprised me, especially for a straight-up medley. I later found out that a very experimental film was made based on the game, and I have the strangest sense of déjà vu that I've seen it before. In any case, Press Start would perform this music many years later despite its age and obscurity, and I'm thankful for it. Then there's track 8, Okami. This is something of a medley, but it all goes together and feels like one complete piece. More native Japanese instruments return. I get the feeling some find this to be tacky, but I don't really think so. I find it gives this piece in particular a great amount of weight. Their role next to the orchestra is like that of the past, returning into fruition, and the orchestra is the present that drives it. You get a sense of history, even as the music looks ahead throughout its duration. It's very powerful. The heavy moment during the reset passage gives us a sterling, serious, and heart-rendering phrase from the strings. It, for whatever reason, reminds me of the iconic serious moment in The Planet's Jupiter, only the Japanese version and much, much shorter. A chord from the harp wishes by suddenly, playing it down with a kind of brave humor before bursting into a proud march led by the flute, which you'd expect for its melodic resonance, but not so much for its power. It's a stirring and grand piece of music, and ultimately my MVP pick for Press Start. Now, the funny thing about Press Start is that remnants of its existence lay elsewhere. Performances of Earthbound, Super Mario Galaxy, and Zone of the Enders do exist, and you can find them in the links below or simply typing up the concert's name, but the sound quality ranges from bad to so-so. As such, I don't think it's really fair or possible to give comment on them. There are still 2 other pieces from the lore of Press Start. One is a medley of music from Wild Arms, clocking over 12 minutes long. It's terrific, and I recommend you check that one out. But what might be Press Start's best performance, arrangement, and overall piece that I've ever heard is the main theme to Muramasa, the Demon Blade, played just 1 year after this concert. It is a beast, and a terrific orchestral adaptation of the wacky mystic world of Muramasa. In keeping with many of the tracks on this CD, Muramasa uses native instruments, but to the surprise of many, adds some odd modern-day embellishments, including the electric guitar, which I feel is actually used to nice effect here. The original main theme to Muramasa isn't even that great, but it sounds breathtaking here. The first minute feels like a merging of two worlds crossing through a threshold that first leads us to the underworld when Muramasa's bedazzled main theme starts. The Few, a breathy yet sharp Japanese instrument, has a solo of the leading melody, leading into the most beautiful moment of the piece where, what else? The oboe plays it down with a soothing, gentle sulk, supported by smooth strings. It is a melt-inducing phrase, so coy and sexy, I get shivers whenever I listen to it. The breathy trills of the Few, pounding drums, splashy percussion, and raspy guitar give way to a violent but breathtakingly detailed musical world of woe. Of course, the harp plays that magical role you'd expect, hinting at a divine presence. It's just so cool, this piece. You can feel the dirt, the hellfire, the blood, and you're rushed into it headlong. The piece revels in character with orchestral splendor and is simply one of the all-time best arrangements of video game music. So in conclusion, I hope I made you as depressed as I am knowing the concert's gone. CD's pretty rare too. You can find a few copies rotating around Amazon Japan, but I'm not sure how many loopholes you'd have to go through to buy it. Is it worth the time? Heck yeah! I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. My MVP pick is the Okami medley. I didn't actually talk about the other two pieces, but they're really good. Suikoden is a pleasant, up-spirited march, and Opa Opa makes for a silly bonus track. Press Start, Symphony of Games 2009. I cannot recommend this CD enough. Who knows? Maybe if more people purchase it, someone will notice and they'll release more recordings of the concert, which would be amazing. This was Seth. Take it easy and be safe.